it's time for Lefties Losing It. Now, I presume this next item was an April Fool's Day joke, but apparently it's real. Kamala Harris is set to be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to headline a real estate conference in Australia on the Gold Coast. And wowee, one of those land rats love hearing an inspirational speech from this fine orator.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. You know?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
You know, when we talk about our children, I know for this group, we all believe that when we talk about the children of the community, they are the children of the community. We all watched the television coverage of just yesterday. That's on top of everything else that we know and don't know yet, based on what we've just been able to see. And because we've seen it or not doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but just limited to what we have seen.
Oh gosh, I miss her. Now, you may have heard of the concept of FAFO, where you F around and find out. Well, this next dude found out all right. Here he is being confronted by the owner of the Tesla he vandalized, allegedly.
Write a check. You just bought a Tesla.
I can wipe it off
with
a towel.
No,
it's not.
No, it is a hate crime, sir. It is a hate crime. Did you write a swastika on there?
I'm sorry you're upset.
Did you write a swastika?
It didn't even work.
I'm sorry you're upset. It didn't even work. Really? These lefties are vile. Let's go back to that interaction and see if this guy understands that the FAFO equation is real. The more you F around, the more you're going to find out.
It's at the police right now. It's being fingerprinted.
What do you mean it's being fingerprinted?
Because they're trying to track you down. Thankfully, Facebook tracked you down.
I said, I'm sorry.
For what?
And I apologize.
For what?
I have nothing against your car, and I have nothing against you.
So why would you write a swastika on a Tesla?
Obviously, I have something against Elon Musk, but that's not the way
to show my...
So
Elon Musk owns that car? Because it was bought and paid for. It was bought and paid for a long time ago.
That's why it's misguided, and obviously I did not intend to do this.
Oh, he didn't mean to do it. He doesn't like Elon Musk. He's since been charged with a number of offences, including criminal mischief and harassment. Now, this mindless vandalism from the left is nothing new, nor are attacks against cars. They've been doing it for years. It just wasn't directed exclusively to Teslas in the past. Here is an oldie but a goodie. A lefty caught keying a vehicle because it had a pro-Trump sticker. I think he's more scared of the wife than the cops. Imagine being married to this aging soy boy.
The green Toyota Tundra pickup truck that you walked up to, you don't remember what you did? What did you do to it?
I scratched it.
Why? Was it the bumper sticker? And she's got a sticker that says, "Let's go Brandon" or something.
Yeah, I guess it infuriated me.
That's the only reason you did it? You don't know who owns the truck or anything?
Yeah, that's the only reason I did it.
Was it a key?
No, it's my key fob. Yeah.
Do you know which key you used?
No, I have no idea.
I'm guessing you know it's expensive to repaint a truck.
I'm gonna have to repaint the truck.
Did you?
Stupid, idiotic, and I'm gonna get something in the truck. Get that fucking much up.
And you should.
Yeah.
But
I made a stupid mistake.
Mr. Brothers, here's the unfortunate news. She wants to press charges, so I have to take you to jail, sir, so I need you to turn around. When you damage someone's property over $1,000, it's a felony.
And Kevin Connell 3. We're treating on you.
For a felony criminal mischief.
That's a felony?
It's about $6,000 to repaint the truck. He has to go to jail, and tomorrow morning we'll have first appearance in front of a judge.
Stupid.
Don't.
And I regret to inform you that the awfuls are at it again. Awfuls, that stands for affluent white female lefties.
It's time to speak up. They're rolling back segregation. They are rolling back segregation. To be clear, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is still in place and has not been disbanded. But we know what their goal is. There is always step one in a process, and we absolutely know what their goal is.
She must think if you repeat something, it makes it true. Let's hear from this white saviour and her fever dreams about Trump bringing back segregation like he's some sort of Democrat.
This time, white people, we are the ones that are going to be on the front crossing that bridge. Do you hear me? We are the ones that are going to stand in the streets. Our black countrymen have done their time at the front of the lines, and it is our turn. It is our turn to face the water hoses and to face the dogs and to face the tear gas, because we have let this happen. Not on my watch.
Not on her watch, folks. Imagine being so unhinged with fantasies about the return of segregation. Do these people have jobs? By the way, that video has had millions of views, gone viral on TikTok and elsewhere. Perhaps this next lady saw this video because she seems rather animated and thinks she's going to encounter white-only signs across America.
Let me walk into a business and see a whites-only sign. I'm white. I'm about as white as they get. Look at how pale I am, ma'am. And I will use every ounce of that white privilege I've got to absolutely up their day.
This next woman is perfectly okay with property being destroyed.
Destruction of property is a perfectly viable source of protest. No harming humans, obviously. Yeah. Human life is sacred no matter whose it is. But property these are just things. These are just cars.
They're just cars? I wonder if she'd call the cops if I destroyed her Subaru. And bad news, white men, these awfuls will not date you. I just hope you can cope with the devastation and pick up the shattered pieces of your life.
Friendly reminder, as a white American woman, I will no longer be dating white men. I'm looking for anything other than a white man, okay? Just a heads up.
Yes, these women are just heroes in their own lunchtimes, and they are so divorced from reality that they have no idea how awful they appear to normal people. Listen to this story.
I found out today that somebody that I work with is a conservative, and he's somebody who's really intelligent, and he's somebody who works in climate tech as a super smart guy, somebody I would never have thought was conservative, and apparently he is. And it's surprising, and it's disgusting. But what's most surprising to me is the level of sudden hatred that I have for him. Sudden hatred for this man who I used to respect suddenly just went boop, and I hate him now.
Now to 60 Minutes and Leslie Stahl, who is rightly being criticised for this absurd question to American-Israeli man Keith Segal, who was kidnapped and starved by Hamas terrorists.
I saw sexual assault with female hostages.
Keith says things got worse for him after Aviva was released and that early ceasefire collapsed.
The terrorists became very mean and very cruel and violent.
More so?
Much more so. They were beating me and starving me.
Do you think they starved you, or they just didn't have food?
No, I think they starved me, and they would often eat in front of me and not offer me food.
What in God's name was she thinking? Yes, the Hamas terrorists don't have food, Leslie. Do any of them look emaciated at their sick hostage handover rallies? Joining me now is Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, let's start with an incredible story. A toddler aged around 3 has been booted from a British kindergarten after being accused of abuse against sexual orientation and gender identity. And this poor kid is not alone. In the 2022-23 academic period, 93 other children in state primary schools in the UK were suspended or permanently excluded for homophobia or transphobia during that period. As J.K. Rowling noted today, this is totalitarian insanity. If you think small children should be punished for being able to recognise sex, you are a dangerous zealot who should be nowhere near kids. I can't help but agree with that. I mean, throwing kids out of preschool and primary school over gender identity sensitivities, that seems mad.
To say the least. And I think, what we're seeing here is the lag time between these big institutions like K-12 schools and many others versus where the public is and the electorate is. And this is an 80-20 issue. It's probably a 99-1 issue, I would say, when you zoom in on specifically toddlers and young children and all of this madness. Everybody understands it. You have Tavistock and those things, the health institutions that were doing interventional strategies around the trans issue have all walked it back in the very progressive parts of the world, including the UK and Scandinavia and elsewhere. And the schools just haven't caught up. And whenever you see these edge cases come into the fore, it just really shines a light on it. And hopefully we see some fast movements in the other direction.
Yeah, Australia is almost an outlier when it comes to these issues because, the UK has had a bit of a reckoning. They've changed their policies. They've pretty much banned these so-called gender-affirming care for children, whilst in Australia it's a very different picture indeed. Now, let's look at France briefly. The leader of the right-wing party, their national rally, Marine Le Pen, has been banned from public office for 5 years by a Parisian court after being found guilty of fraud offences. Kosha, there is got to say, a great deal of suspicion around this prosecution and sentence. It's been seen in many quarters as a political prosecution. I don't know if that's fair or not, but certainly she is the main contender at this point, and she won't be able to run as things stand.
Absolutely. Now, they're saying her camp is saying she'll appeal it, and the odds seem favourable that it'll be overturned on appeal. We'll see, because the stakes only get higher. Who knows what the details of the legal case are? This is breaking news, but I think it does not feel like a coincidence to a lot of people who are asking questions. You have Marine Le Pen in France, you have the Romanian candidate who the election was annulled and now he's been banned. You have Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, who also was put in jail. You have Imran Khan in Pakistan, who was very popular in this world-famous cricketer.
Populist leaders, all popular. Very much populist
And of course
leaders.
Trump, who we know that they tried everything in the kitchen sink at him, and that the commonality is that these are all populist, nationalist folks from that wing of the right side of politics. They're very, very popular. I think Marine Le Pen is at the top of the polls in terms of popularity. And then, coincidentally, somehow there's all this criminality that the courts seem to find in them, and taking them off the ballot or taking them out of the running. It's certainly raising a lot of eyebrows.
It certainly is, and you mentioned Romania there. We're talking here about NATO allies, and a question, this is what JD Vance was lecturing Europe about, just how sound is your democracy? You like to lecture the rest of the world about threats to democracy, but just how sound is Europe's democracy, where the elite seem to decide who's fit to govern and who's not. And we saw even in the Netherlands where the election results were, and even Germany, where the AfD, who were the second most popular party, were kind of excluded from
these uneasy alliances that the other side from the left and the right join
to exclude
them. And I think JD Vance's speech is aging very well, and it is going to age very well the more and more we keep seeing these things happen in Europe.
Now, a video clip featuring South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has resurfaced online, and here he explains, and it's crystal clear, the policy they have of confiscating land without compensation.
The question of land, the land of our forefathers and our foremothers, must return to our people without any fail and without any payment of compensation. And it must happen now.
Kosha, that certainly explains why Donald Trump has decided to pull funding from South Africa. But what is the rest of the international community doing, including Australia? Because we're talking about farms being confiscated from white farmers, and as you heard there, no compensation.
Absolutely. I think this is an issue that angers certain parts, certainly of the right side of politics, who have been crying for a while about the outrage machine seems to always be selected and trained on people who are disadvantaged, who have more melanin in their skin. And when somebody has less melanin, like the white farmers of South Africa, it just feels like the response has been inadequate, especially from Christian countries that have very generous refugee and asylum policies, like Australia, like America. Can they do more? Should they be doing more to take them in, as well as punching back the way Trump is with sanctions, cutting off aid, et cetera. So this president, some of his speeches are really, really quite jarring.
Absolutely.
And his problem is that the richest man in the world and very famous person happens to be Elon Musk, who's really raising the attention on this issue, and we're going to see more of this, I think.
Well, I just can't understand why there's not just political pressure being put on South Africa. We saw during the apartheid era, sporting teams refused to travel there, all sorts of international sanctions and all sorts of measures that can be taken to bring the country into line and say you can't institute racist policies. The rest of the world's not going to be okay with that. But when it's the other way, when it's whites being discriminated against, those sorts of measures are not at all employed, other than by Donald Trump.
That seems to be the only inference that many people are drawing, like what is different, because you're right, South Africa has been on the receiving end of huge sanctions from around the world when it was reversed.
Absolutely. Now, let's have a look at more craziness from the UK. This story is causing shockwaves. It shows just how far the UK has fallen in terms of valuing free speech. In January this year, 6 British police officers turned up to arrest a couple, mum and dad, who had criticised the policies of their daughter's school in emails and a WhatsApp chat group with other parents. So you can see that you can't get that many cops to show up if your house has been broken into in the UK, but they'll come for these supposed hate crimes. Now, the couple were arrested in front of their crying child, detained for 8 hours, and after a 5-week investigation, the case was closed, no charges. And what's incredible here, Kosha, is we still don't know, and the parents say they don't know what they said that warranted this police attention. So they're not even told this is what you said that crossed a line or caused an offence or caused a complaint. I mean, this is not a first world country that values free speech.
It's almost unrecognizable, and it's so sad because that value comes out of there from the Magna Carta and everything else. So much of all of these institutions can be sourced back to England, and that's why I think it burns and hurts people so much more. Again, that J.D. Vance speech is aging very well, both the speech as well as when Keir Starmer was in the White House. They sort of had a little back and forth, and Keir Starmer said he's very proud of the heritage of the UK with free speech.
I remember that.
This does not shine that in a good light. It's also very Orwellian, sort of driving a wedge between parents and children, sort of, and the state sort of coming into the right of a parent and parental rights, pushing back against a school and how their kids are being educated. So there's that layer on top of the free speech layer. And I hope this story doesn't die and we get some pressure put on.
Yeah, I hope there's at least some clarity around why these parents were targeted. And staying in the UK, a new set of sentencing guidelines for UK judges is coming to effect, and it encourages judges to be more lenient towards people from an ethnic or faith minority. Pretty much everybody gets a discount except for, you guessed it, white men. Even Keir Starmer is against this lunacy.
I'm disappointed in this response, and the Lord Chancellor is obviously continuing to engage on this, and we're considering our response. And, you know, all options are on the table, but I am disappointed at this outcome.
The end result of this is if you're a white man, particularly a straight, white, Christian man, then you're going to receive a harsher sentence than if you're not. And it's not just the two-tier justice system that we've seen in effect. This is now a sentencing recommendation.
And that creep continues where it's official. You sort of see also the war between the judicial branch, we're seeing that a lot in the US, and the legislative branch, where even Keir Starmer is objecting to it, and yet you see the other side where the judicial branch wields a lot of power and they can do things like this to make life very difficult, even if it maybe is not constitutional, and maybe some challenges will be brought. I hope that they are with that. And it's just more coming from the UK. It's really, when you piece all of that together with the earlier stories that you've covered, it feels, again, Orwellian.
Oh, we've got more. Another example of the two-tier justice system in the UK, a pro-Palestinian activist who spat in the faces of 2 police officers has walked free after she claimed it was an accident and that she was in fact aiming at the Israelis, the counter-protesters, but missed. Kosha, this is incredible. We saw people locked up for being at anti-immigration protests. We saw people receive jail sentences who didn't actually commit acts of violence themselves, but they were at violent protests. And then you see this, someone walking free after spitting in the face of police officers.
She sounds very charming.
Yeah.
it's again, that two-tiered thing, whether it's official or unofficial, everybody understands it. And, you know, you can look at a spectrum where I just think of San Francisco, where they've had a version of this after Black Lives Matter. They decriminalize things, especially for certain groups of people. Everyone can see the outcome of what that's done to a once great and iconic city. So much so that even the very progressive left wing of politics has tried to recall people, and they're punching back a little bit. And then on the other end, you have President Bukele in El Salvador, who has very strict way of going after and prosecuting criminal behavior. This obviously isn't in that league, but the point is you can see what happens when you're soft on crime and then selectively soft on crime for certain groups. That is a recipe for very bad social implications. And then on the other side, you have somebody who's really, really strict, and it can just completely improve the way of life over there, and we'll see.
Absolutely. And when you've got this two-tier justice system, we've seen it in the US, you could argue it exists in Australia as well. It undermines trust in the system, and in the US, certainly trust in those institutions plummeted, and it's part of the reason why Donald Trump was elected. He's been elected to remedy that. Kirsha Gator, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Pleasure.